This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey, welcome to the Start Spreading the News Yankees show. Dr. Paul Semendinger here, along with the even more brilliant, probably smarter than anybody I know, Dr. EJ Fagan, to give you
That's not true, but
an
Paul,
hour
how you
of
doing?
Yankee talk. I'm doing great. Now, here's the problem, as we just talked about. I was away on a cruise last week, so I really haven't had a whole lot of time to follow the Yankees. I mean, I have a couple topics, a couple things, but I haven't seen the spring training game yet. There's one that's televised right now. They're doing a live thread on the Yankees.
Yeah, weird night
Yankees
game.
blog.
3 days in, we have a night game in spring training.
Yeah, fun stuff, and you know it's always good to see. I know Jason Dominguez had a big home run the other day.
Huge home run, yeah.
And so the question is, is he ready? Let's start off with that question. There was a little debate on Dominguez on Start Spreading the News. It was just a quick a question back and forth and a response, but the idea was that he's got to prove that he can really do this. And I brought up the fact that he did not do particularly well in the Arizona Fall League. And the comment that came back was, yeah, but look how young he was. And my response to that was that's true. He's young, but if he is what people are saying is a possible player in the major leagues, I don't think anybody cares if he's 18, 16, 37 or whatever. If you're going to be in the major leagues, you got to perform. They're not looking at your age anymore. So at some point, the age thing, I don't think he's young for his age. He's young for AA. He's young for single A, considering all that. But if the idea is that he's one of the guys who might end up playing left field for the Yankees this year, the age thing goes away. He's got to perform. Nobody cares what his age is. He's got to perform. No, am I wrong on that?
I mean, the problem with the prospect is you're trying to understand how good they would be if in the major leagues. Now, how good would he be today? How good would he be a year from now? Those are different questions. But in theory, he is going to be a better baseball player in 2023 than he was in 2022. And the age is relevant to that. Dominguez was very young. He is a Latin American prospect. He missed the 2020 season, which was his age, I believe, 17 season, very, very important season to miss. And really showed a lot of progression in 2022. So we kind of enter 2022 as this guy with a long swing. You've seen these players before, right? Immensely talented, strikes out a bunch, never really puts a lot of contact on the ball except in batting practice. And frankly, that's what we thought Dominguez was through about mid-May of last year and really much of his debut in 2021. And then he just kind of got better. He stopped striking out. He started hitting for a decent amount of power, though not, 40 home run power, and then lost a little bit of weight, started running faster. Now everybody seems to be back on the train of him being a very, very strong center fielder when we thought he might be a kind of an average corner outfielder at some point. I think he's really good. And I think actually some of the prospect lists are underrating him right now.
Interesting.
So if you look at all the top 100 lists, they have him usually as the second or third best player in the league, kind of similar in ranking, second or third best player in the Yankee system, similar in ranking to Oswald Peraza. And usually that's in the kind of 40 to 50 out of 100 range in Major League Baseball. I just think I rate him higher, right? He is incredibly talented. If you look at him, he is built like a very, very muscly person. He is fast. And I think in the spring training so far, we've seen all of the above. He made some great plays in center field. The Yankees had him start the first game on the road. That was a game where they put the absolute minimum number of major league players on that road trip. I believe there was Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, I think Gleyber Torres, and like Ryan Weber was to meet their quota of major league players. But the fans got to look at Dominguez. He rewarded them with a big, big home run. He then he came in today. And is hit a single and stole a base. I think, I mean, he looks good. I mean, frankly, he doesn't look, I saw pictures of him last year where he looked like heavy. He doesn't look heavy. He looks athletic as hell right now. And I mean, I buy stock in Dominguez.
So Two questions. First of all, if you are, I understand the rule that you have to have a certain amount of major league players, but if you're going to a spring training game, wouldn't you prefer to see Jason Dominguez and Anthony Volpe?
I mean, I would.
Yeah, right. Like this is what I want to see. I don't really.
Some people just want to see their favorite players. Maybe they live in Florida and they don't get to see their favorite players all that often live. When you think about this point in spring training, and really you think about all of spring training just by results, you don't learn a lot from the pure numbers. Right? Someone hits 350 in spring training. It doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't predict what they're going to do.
Kyle Higashioka usually hits 350 and he hits about 30 home runs.
It's not a bad sign, right? You'd rather the player hit than not hit, but it doesn't tell you very much. But what I think you do learn in spring training, especially early in spring training, is you kind of learn where the team views a player.
Correct.
And they express that by giving them playing time, whether they start the game, whether they relieve the game, what positions they play. For pitchers that you can kind of learn a little bit based upon where in the game that they come in. And Dominguez started the first spring training game. Not some players that are kind of ahead of him in the pecking order, like Elijah Dunham or Brandon Lockridge, or some guys who are probably going to be the AAA center fielder. Rafael Ortega didn't get in until the split squad game yesterday. And I think that says that the Yankees want to give Dominguez a chance to be the next guy to be called up. I don't think he breaks with the team. He doesn't have a lot of time at AA. He had a slow start when he got off the AA and really kind of started popping off in the playoffs. And so his numbers don't look as good as I think they are, but then they sent him down to the Arizona Fall League. I think, Dominguez could be could start a AAA this year. And at his age, that's a really good sign. Now, the question you started this off with is, does that matter for the actual major league team? And I don't think it does. But if Dominguez is a guy who could just have a breakout, right? We could be looking on May 15th and he could be slugging 650 and ready for the major leagues. And that becomes more likely when you consider his age. That he's been so good at such a young age and really started to change his game for the better last year. And if it all clicks, right, if he takes that contact swing he developed last year and the really good strike zone judgment and the really good defense and speed, stolen bases, and then he adds like the power we see in batting practice that we've seen in very brief periods in spring training, that's really good. I wouldn't count on it to start the season, but I think there's a pretty good chance that he's on this team for the playoffs. The Yankees need outfielders.
So give me the date. What date is Jason Dominguez
August
on
1st.
The Yankees? August 1st?
I think it's late. I don't think it's earlier than that. I think there's other guys who could get called up earlier. I think it's August 1st or when Harrison Bader gets injured. Right? To me, because the Yankees just need outfielders. And there's other guys in this team who probably get called up first. Not Esteban Florial, who, by the way, had a good game today, because Esteban Florial doesn't have options.
Right. He's either going to make the team or he's gone.
He either makes the team or someone will pick him up, because I'm pretty sure he deserves a spot in the major league somewhere. And so if he doesn't make the team, there's like a list of players who probably need to be called up before Dominguez. I think the Elijah Dunham, Brandon Lockridge, those are the names I'd look at, but those aren't like elite prospects. They're interesting prospects. Lockridge, defense first guy, runs fast. Elijah Dunham is a player that I think a lot of people think is a future major league player, but maybe more of a Jake Cave type fringe outfielder who somehow you look at the end of his career, he played 8 seasons. But not someone who you really expect to be in the Yankees. I think that's kind of the consensus on Dunham, though frankly, we could have used that player last year. So maybe we see him. And then you have Everson Pereira, who's also on the 40-man roster. One thing I've been trying to write, and I can't make it interesting, is just kind of pointing out the Yankees have probably 6 spots open on the 40-man. Guys who are going to the 60-day DL, plus those guys who are out of options, most notably DV Garcia and Esteban Florial, plus probably Albert Abreu. They got room to add someone like Dominguez. And so, normally you're hesitant to call up a Dominguez because you'd have to DFA someone to call him up. The Yankees have room to do that. So I don't think that's a problem. Also, the Yankees could add more room if they end up trading like an infielder at the end of spring training, which is still very possible. So I really like what I saw from Dominguez. I haven't seen him in HD all that often. You see these little YouTube clips sometimes, him taking batting practice, that thing. He looked great in center field. He's fast. Again, he looks fit as hell. He definitely seemed to have lost a little bit of weight, or at least leaned out a little bit. And doesn't look like doesn't have the body type of a lot of baseball players, but has the body type of a lot of good baseball players. It just looks like a young Mike Trout. It's weird. Imagine Mike Trout.
Does he look like Mike Trout? Yeah.
I mean, he just look at him. He's got that weird muscly body that just not a lot of baseball players have. I can't really picture Mickey Mantle in my mind, but people compare him to Mickey Mantle in that same way. And you see why, just because he looks different. Now, Trout didn't look like this when he was Dominguez's age. Trout put that weight on in his 20s. He looked more like a kind of thin, fast guy when he first got called up. But you see why the comparisons are there.
Now, Dominguez comes up on August 1st, 2023. There's a great story about the 1995 season. The Yankees had this rookie starting pitcher named Mariano Rivera. They also had a hotshot young rookie named Derek Jeter. And they came up, they got their call, and they were both sent to the minor leagues on the exact same day. They got sent down, and listen, we look at it now historically and we go, well, you knew they were coming back, but you never know they're coming back. You never know. I mean, if you're the guy getting sent down, there's no guarantee you're coming back. You got sent down. And a lot of guys have a high upsides, top prospects, they get sent down and you never hear from them again.
I get injured or something, right? I mean, think about Ben Rortvedt. Ben Rortvedt 2 years ago was a major league player.
Mm-hmm. And
not
we're
majors
hoping,
right now.
We're hoping
talented,
that he comes back. Yeah.
He was a talented major league player that a lot of teams liked.
And
he's
left-handed catcher, he could play a role on the Yankees.
The Yankee. I mean, let's talk about Rortvedt.
Before we get there, let me just ask you. Dominguez comes up on August 1st. Does he go back down, or is this his coronation?
I think if he gets called up, he's coming up for a lengthy period of time. For example, let's say Harrison Bader, pulls a hamstring and he's going to be out for 2 weeks. I don't think you call him up. I think you call him up when either you have no left fielder, which could happen at any point this season, or you have a serious injury to somebody. Judge, Bader could be one of the left fielders. I think that's probably more likely for that midseason call up. But Dominguez could also just kind of like these prospects are so talented, they could just force their way onto the roster just by being so good. That was basically what Cabrera did last season. He had a month and a half of being better than Volpe and Peraza and forced his way to a call-up. The Yankees also kind of desperately needed him. Dominguez has that talent. Again, you could imagine Dominguez just, starting at AA, killing the ball at AA, getting promoted to AAA, and then just kind of waiting for an opening. You could also imagine, the Hicks-Cabrera duo being fine but not great. And at some point, the Yankees just saying, well, let's give it a try and calling him up.
Let's say the Yankees win 88 games in 2023. Not great, not terrible. It's a winning record. It's nice.
Second wild card spot or something.
Yeah, but as part of that, Oswald Peraza hits 280. Blasts 12 home runs. His on-base percentage is 360. He plays a great shortstop, let's just say. Anthony Volpe comes up, spends the last 2.5 months, bats 287, has an on-base percentage closer to 390, steals.
I think a lot would have to go wrong for this to be an 88-win team then.
Well, but just hear me out. Like everything else goes wrong, right? The pitchers break down or whatever. Steals 17 out of 19 bases. And Dominguez comes up and, hits 240. But in 37 games, he blasts 9 home runs. It's for real. So all 3 guys arrive. It's not even a question. And going into 2024 that they've arrived. But at the same time, you're disappointed because the Yankees, they made the first wild card and then they get eliminated in the first round. But if those 3 guys arrive, even if the Yankees don't win a World Series, Is this a successful year?
Yes and no. Look, I think it depends on what the long-term outlook for the team looks like. So let's say Garrett Cole goes. Your scenario, by the way, is one where a lot of bad things have to go wrong, because especially some of the numbers you mentioned, those are rookie of the year or better times 3 kind of numbers. But let's say, Garrett Cole has Tommy John surgery and Aaron Judge blows out his ACL. We can go down the list of things.
Right.
The Yankees have some long-term contracts, and even if the prospects are really good, they need some of those long-term contracts to work out. And so it really depends on what goes wrong. But that said, I mean, look, if all 3 of these prospects are going to be long-term, really good major league players, and one of them is the next great Yankee, I mean, the Yankees are in very good shape long-term.
Yeah. So I'm sort of like asking, if the Yankees have a disappointing season as a team for whatever reason, and we don't want injuries and all that kind of stuff, but if this becomes the year that those guys actually arrive, it almost would take the sting out of the fact that it's another year without a World Series. You say, all right, you know what? I'm excited about 2024 because they did it, right?
Yeah, young players are fun, right? I mean, look, the think about the 2017 Yankees. Judge and Sanchez, they didn't win a World Series. In fact, they didn't go deep into the playoffs, but it was fun, right? And I really love watching, young guys reinvent themselves, like watching players who I get to root for a decade plus. I think all 3 of those players we talked about are really fun. Like, they're fun players. They're players you want to root for. I think it's a lot more fun to watch Jason Dominguez be a 3-win player than Aaron Hicks be a 3-win player.
Or Giancarlo Stanton at this point.
Even though it's the same number of wins, right? I mean, there's something fun about that. And also there's something about the future. I mean, if the Yankees manage to win 88 games and those things don't happen, and all 3 of those prospects end up being duds, or 2 of the 3 end up being duds, and one ends up being, okay, a Gleyber Torres okay kind of situation, it's going to be a tough team to watch in a few years. There's really a lot riding on these guys. There are other prospects coming up, but they're not on the same level. For the most part, the top 100 lists that have come out have all said that these Yankees are the top 100, and the kind of the next tier of Yankees prospects are good prospects, but not dominant prospects. We have the Athletic ranked all 30 farm systems. The Yankees were 14th, which is good, but not great. And that's largely on the basis of those 3 guys. And so, you really got to cross your fingers on these guys. I'm optimistic. As we can talk about what we've seen from them in spring training so far. I like what we've seen so far, but they got to do it in the majors, and we'll see.
Good stuff. All right. So you mentioned Ben Roquefort, and he just had surgery. So why don't you tell us a little about it?
So we heard about a week ago that he went down with a finger surgery, and we didn't really know what that was. Well, it turns out he had a pretty nasty aneurysm in his finger. He was starting to play catch as part of the spring training, felt it, being a little numb, and it started going blue. Went to a doctor. They found an aneurysm in his finger, and basically said that if he hadn't come in right away,
in his shoulder? No,
I thought it was his finger. Or let's see here. Where's the aneurysm? Let's see here. The
finger was the problem, but the.
So let's see. Remove an aneurysm in the posterior artery near the left shoulder. And he found it in his finger, but potentially, I guess not his finger. Potentially, his arm would have had to be amputated had they not found it as quickly as they can. One of the great things about sports teams is they have doctors around, and so people find these things very quickly. I suspect, for example, like other preventable diseases, like cancer, get found very early in active athletes. But that is incredible. I mean, I'm glad he's going to be okay. He should be back playing in a month or so. Roquefort's an interesting and important player for the Yankees. I'm glad just for his own health that he's going to be okay. But for the Yankees, one thing to remember, and something we've seen in spring training, we can talk about this too. There's going to be a lot more running in this season. Jose Trevino deservedly won the Platinum Glove last year, almost entirely on being the best pitch framer in the world. And that was worth a lot. He's a big reason why the Yankees had a great pitching year last year. Framing will continue to be important this year, right? We don't have robo umps yet, so framing is still a very important part of catching. But the new base running rules, in particular, the rules related to throwing over to first base and disengaging the mound, are going to put a premium on running. And Trevino has a well below average arm. It's not something he's very good at. I forget what his caught stealing rate was last year, but it was pretty low. Higashioka has about an average arm. Not great, not terrible. And Ben Rortvedt has a cannon for an arm. And I suspect that the Ben Rortvedts of the world will be the more typical catcher in a few years. Not only because you might have robo-umps, so framing will become less of an important factor, but more importantly, I think, because I think there's going to be a lot of running in baseball. I'm glad. I love running in baseball. But I think Trevino could very quickly become a bit of a defensive liability because he can't control the running game the way that Rortvedt would be able to.
One guy who's out there who does have a good arm and he's not great at receiving and framing is Gary Sanchez.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have a job.
And he doesn't have a job. If this were next year and robo-umps were in and you were the Yankees, knowing everything that happened with Sanchez and the way the fans, took
He had some comments recently.
Yeah. Did he have some comments?
He basically said the fans were mean to him.
Would you bring him in?
No, one, because the defensive numbers aren't bad on Sanchez because he's actually a pretty good framer. I don't think his arm is stacking up very well lately, and he still is not great at blocking balls. Last season, he was a 1.3 win catcher, so significantly worse than Trevino, and actually I think worse than Higashioka, or at least if they had the same playing time, it would be worse than Higashioka. So no, I think there's a reason why he doesn't have a job. I mean, catching is a premium position. He can still hit better than most catchers. He was a below average hitter for the major leagues last year, but above average for catchers. But he's just, people don't want to employ him, and for a reason. I think if there was a good reason that the Yankees should sign him, that another team would have signed him by now.
But I'm saying it's next year, and there's robo.
He'll be a year older. I mean, he's 29 years old. Catcher careers don't last forever, and he's a big guy, and wasn't a particularly athletic or great catcher when he was younger.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean, I think Gary Sanchez should probably start taking reps at first base.
So one of the things I saw, again, I was away last week and I didn't have much internet access. We were on a cruise and it was always great. But every now and again, if we got into a port, I turned my phone on and tried to catch up on some Yankee news. Was this idea, and you and I haven't talked about this yet, but I have very strong feelings here. We might actually have to battle this one out here. That the Yankees, in order to get Giancarlo Stanton in the lineup, in the field, would consider moving Aaron Judge to left field to accommodate Giancarlo Stanton so he could play right field. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think Yankee Stadium left field is basically center field. Giancarlo Stanton, they tried playing him in left field last year. Didn't look great. Didn't look terrible. He's slow. He's not going to get to a lot of balls, and left field's a tough place to play. This is where Brett Gardner played so much of his career. And where Aaron Hicks, who's relatively fast still for an outfielder, former center fielder, is going to play a lot this year. I actually think we saw this when Oswaldo Cabrera moved from right to left in the playoffs. In right, small outfield, he's not very fast. He doesn't have he's not great at getting jumps in the outfield, but has a strong arm. He was able to be a pretty good defender. In fact, some of the defensive numbers thought he was a great defender. That's a very small sample size. But then you move him to left and he looks lost out there and didn't look great in the one spring training game that I saw him in. Judge was an average center fielder, right? He was pretty good in center field. And I think there's no reason that if Judge is going to be moving around the field, that you should just confine him to right. So if Stanton could be a little better as a right fielder, he still's got a pretty good arm with the diminished range. I think it's that's the best lineup, and it allows you hopefully to get Stanton in the field a lot more. The Yankees have good reasons to have Stanton in the field, especially against a lefty, because they have 5 right-handed infielders, or they've Anthony Rizzo and 4 right-handed infielders, and you might want LeMahieu, to DH. And I think that is good reason to try to get Stanton to play the field a little bit. Also, injuries happen, and I think getting a little more, getting used to Stanton playing the field a little bit more is a good thing, and I think that means right field in Yankee Stadium.
So, all right. So we're going to disagree vehemently on this one. Part of Aaron Judge's value is the fact that he's a premier right fielder. And one of the great things that great right fielders have are rocket arms. And right field and left field are different. The left field in Yankee Stadium is difficult. We saw that even with a guy like Joey Gallo, who's a plus defender in right field, looked awful in left field. Aaron Judge, they just invested $40 million into him because he's a premier right fielder. And in his entire life, except for like 7 innings, and I don't think he ever had a play, he's never played left field. So going even through college. So everyone who's ever seen him play has said this guy is a right fielder. Now, could he play left field? Of course he can. But why would you take your player who is a virtuoso in right field and move him to left field where he would be a novice? It's a different position. The ball comes after. In fact, I was just reading the book On the Cruise, Ricky Henderson biography by Howard Bryant. And in the middle of his career, I believe the Padres I think it might have been the Padres or the Dodgers were going to acquire him. I think it was the Dodgers actually, and make him a right fielder. Ricky played left and center his whole life. And Ricky goes, he had an opportunity to veto the trade. He goes, I'm not a right fielder. I don't play right field because he doesn't, because it's a different position. I also read the book on Roberto Clemente, who played right field because he was a great right fielder. So I don't understand how you think you're making your team better by taking your best player and putting him out of position, even if he could do it. And his arm becomes less of a factor in left field because you need the stronger arm in right field. No?
Well, I think Stanton has a pretty strong arm. And so
it's not
as good as Judge, but it's pretty good. And Judge played center field for his MVP season. I think
center field and left field are different.
Yeah, when some players can adapt, some can. Judge is and
he only played there because they didn't have a choice. It was out of desperation. They didn't have anybody else to play center field.
Stanton is also a natural, quote unquote, right fielder, and so one player is going to be out of position. And I think Aaron Judge,
make it him rather than your superstar.
So I don't see what you lose. So if the premise is both of them are in the outfield, one of them is in left, one of them's in right. I don't see the harm in moving Judge. Judge seems like he wants to. He's like, hey, he did an interview a couple weeks ago where he's like, I want to keep playing center. I like that. That was fun. And he's fast. He's faster than anyone other than Harrison Bader in the outfield. Yeah, I don't see what the problem here is. If Judge thinks he can do it, and if he can't, then you don't do it. Right? I don't see the harm in trying. It's not like he's going to get injured out there. And maybe Judge is just better than some of these other right fielders at adjusting. I think the Yankees' left field is a fairly unique left field.
And no doubt about that.
And their right field is a unique right field.
Yes,
right?
It is.
And so, I think you played your team's strength. I think the question is what is the strongest? What's the strongest configuration at any given time? What configuration gives you the best chance to win? And I think it's a good argument that there's a configuration that has Stanton right and Judge in left. And frankly, I don't think Stanton can do left field in Yankee Stadium. And if I remember correctly, before the playoffs, they only played Stanton left on the road against like the Red Sox or whatever. And if they want to play that game, they can play that game against the Red Sox. And they can make these decisions based on the ballpark. But I don't see any reason why not to give it a try. And there's some real bad scenarios here where the Yankees have no left fielders.
Right. So we'll disagree on this because I don't see how you take your strongest player and whether he wants to or not. In fact, to me, it's the exact opposite of when the Yankees got A-Rod, who was the guy who should have stayed at shortstop because he was a better defensive shortstop.
Well, that's the difference, I think, right? Is that Jeter should have moved.
Right,
Jeter
but
was
and
better
for the
at that
same
position.
reason, Judge shouldn't move because he's the better right fielder. That's
But he's also
his
the better
spot.
left fielder. He's the better
We don't
everything.
know that because he's never played left in his
We've seen
entire
Stanton
life.
play. Stanton's awful, right?
Right, right. But
that's the
Judge has
question.
never played left field.
But what's the alternative?
Well,
Right?
then you put Stanton out there because you keep your guy. Look, you're making
baseball players are not
an
fragile.
orchestra, and you need a bass player, and you have a pretty good cellist, and you go, well, we also have Yo-Yo Ma, who's the world's greatest cellist. You know, he could probably play bass. He wouldn't do badly there.
I think this is a math problem, and you know, Stanton is whatever a -15 left fielder and a 0 right fielder, let's say. And Judge is I might gotta make sure the math adds up for this example, but a +10 right fielder and a +5 left fielder. Right? Just do the math, right? And if you think that your team is better that way, I don't think we should be treating. I don't think Aaron Judge is gonna have psychological harm from playing left field like he's Clint Frazier or something, right? I think I think Judge is capable of giving it a try, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I think the Yankees are so thin at left field right now that I think they'd be dumb not to try at least have this option in their back pocket. I think there's a very strong chance that by May 1st, the Yankees need a lot of Aaron Judge in left field because Aaron Hicks and Oswaldo Cabrera aren't the option. Now, I have written crazier plans, right? I wrote Substack last year. I've been saying it on the show a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I want to try.
It's going to run on Start Spreading the News tomorrow morning.
I want to try Anthony Volpe in left field. Why? Because they're desperate. Not because I want Anthony Volpe not to be an infielder, but because I think he could probably do it better, or there's a good chance that if plan A fails, that he's their best plan B. But I also think Judge is a fine plan B and Stanton and right. And again, they're not talking about doing it every day. They're talking about doing it every once in a while, allowing you to keep Stanton's bat in the lineup. Now, look, if Stanton's bat is cold, then you don't do it, right? Then you just sit him. But if Stanton is hot and DJ LeMahieu is hot and Gleyber Torres is hot and Peraza, like if you force yourself to push Stanton to the outfield, then I think this is a good idea. Now, there's also the supposition people have made that Stanton might be a little better if he plays more regularly in the outfield. Might keep him as a better hitter. I don't know if that's true or not, but if that is a factor, this is a way to get Stanton more at bats in the field.
I don't know that there's a right fielder, a major league top right fielder in the history of the game who they took out of right field and put in left field. Al Kaline, they never did that. Dave Winfield, they did only because they had Reggie one year, but the minute Reggie was gone, they put him back in right field. Roberto Clemente, they never moved him. I mean, you go to Ichiro in his prime, they never moved him out of right field. The baseball throughout history is
first
never
they moved Ichiro to center, right? Usually,
there's a different center field is different than left field. The ball comes off the bat differently. It's a different position. Like I'm saying, like Yo-Yo Ma could play bass. Sure, he could. Why would you take your great cellist?
Well, what if you don't have a cellist, right? What if you have what if you have me as your cellist, and that's your only option, and you have someone else who could play what's the other position we're talking
bass.
about here?
I'm saying he's.
You have me
don't
as
take your best guy and you put him in the place where he's not the best.
Your only option for bass is me, but you have another cellist who can do a good enough job.
No,
you put Yo-Yo Ma at bass. Like I don't think this is. It doesn't sound like this is something the Yankees are counting on to be their primary left fielder. But again, it's not. Judge is not a fragile person. He's not going to break if you put him in left field, once every other week or whatever they're planning on. And if he's out there and he likes it, why not? I don't really see what the problem here is. You don't move a lot of guys from right to left because usually you stash somebody with a bad arm in left, and usually the guy in right's pretty slow. Like that's there's a lot of left right fielders are pretty awful pretty awful at catching the ball, but had a strong arm. But
I'm talking about your elite guys. Roger Maris never played left field.
I mean, sure.
Dwight Evans never played left field.
Sure. The left field is the position where you put the kid in the little league team who can't do anything. I think the I think I don't think this is a big deal, right? I think this is just very much the Yankees covering their bases, Aaron Judge being a versatile player. And I think versatility is something that good teams value. Like I haven't checked, but I would guarantee that the Astros and the Rays and the Dodgers and all these teams that are consistent winners do this stuff a lot.
I don't think they do it with right fielders putting him in left field.
I mean,
not your superstars.
We can talk left or right field, but like for example, the Dodgers said, "Hey, if we can trade for who was it?
I know Mookie Betts was going to go to second base.
Yeah, Mookie Betts would be, hey, I'll go to second base. What the hell, right? I mean, to me, that kind of versatility is how you construct a roster. And if the best possible team that I can construct has Aaron Judge in left, I'm gonna try to win that game. And I think these kind of arbitrary distinctions are something the Yankees have gotten in trouble with in the past. This guy is my shortstop. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is my shortstop because he is my shortstop.
And I agree with you on that because he's not great. He's not Aaron Judge.
But let's say that you didn't have you didn't have a first baseman, and so you put DJ LeMahieu over there. Is he a great first baseman? No. Is he a better second baseman? Yes. But that's the best you got. And so you put that player out there. And I suspect we're going to be in the situation quite a bit this year because Harrison Bader is going to get injured. And Aaron Hicks is Aaron Hicks. And Oswaldo Cabrera is not really an outfielder. And we can go down the list of problems. And Aaron Judge's versatility is a huge asset. It's one of the reasons why the Yankees were so good last year. They didn't have a center fielder last year. And they took a guy who hadn't really played center field since college and said, can you play center field? And he could. And he was one of the best players of all time that year.
Yeah,
I think I think ideally you find a different left fielder, right? You find a base player who's not bad, and like Paul McCartney is your bass player and Yo-Yo Ma's your cellist, right? Like I think that's the best case scenario. But the Yankees need to prepare for bad scenarios, and they're pretty close to it. They have no depth.
They should have. I don't know. We'll disagree on this. So let's do something a little more fun. There's this wonderful game called Stratomatic Baseball, and the new cards came out are the old cards. They represent last year's team. And I just thought it would be fun. This isn't deciding who's smarter, you or the game or whatever. It's just taking your perception of various players and the game's perception, the people who designed the game, and seeing if your perception of how a player might play compares to how the game has decided that they would play. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So for fielding, and we'll look at fielding first because it's pretty simple. A player is rated from a 1 to a 5. Now, if you're a 1, that means you've got great range. You are the best. Don Mattingly at first base is a 1. Jason Giambi at first base is a 5, right? Like if you're a 5, you're terrible. In fact, they added 5 as a category a number of years ago. It used to be 1 to 4. 4 was your worst defensive guy. So with that as the range, 1 is your best, the guy with the most range, and 5 or 4 is your guy with the worst range. What do you think Stratomatic says for Anthony Rizzo at first base? Is he a 1, 2, 3?
They probably
4?
say he's a 2.
You are good. See, EJ Fagan, this is why you are the smartest baseball guy he is. Yeah, they give him a 2. All right, so same formula for every position. What do you think Glaber got as a second baseman?
I'm going to say he got a 3.
You're amazing. All right, keep going around the infield. Interesting one, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at shortstop.
I think I'm going to say I think he's a 4, but I think they're going to say a 3.
Believe it or not, he got a 2. They gave him good range. How about Donaldson at third?
A 1.
Wow, he got a 2. All right,
they're wrong about that, but okay.
DJ LeMahieu, I'll just tell you this one for first, second, and third is a 2.
Okay,
which makes sense because he's a good defensive player.
I could argue for a 1, but yeah, okay.
So here we go. This is going to be fun. This goes back to my other argument too, but it's irrelevant because this is an infielder playing outfield. Oswald, and I don't have the Harrison Bader card. I think they must have. I only bought the Yankees. They must have stuck him on the Cardinal team because he didn't have a lot of regular season at bats with the Yankees. So I don't have a Harrison Bader card from here. But Oswaldo Cabrera as a right fielder, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
3 probably.
Yes. And what do you think he's in left field?
A 5, a 4.
A 4. Yep. All right, good. You're doing great. This is amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, EJ Fagan has never played Stratomatic. This is amazing. You're Aaron Hicks, center field. What do you think?
Center field, I'm gonna say a 4. Left field, a 2.
Wow. All right, so he's a 3 both, which I found interesting too. And then we just go to Aaron in right field. What do you think?
A 2.
He's a 1. He's got one of the greatest cards ever. I'm not going to get into E ratings, but certain times, like you have to check to see if the guy's going to make an error. You can't get better. I don't think I can get it close enough on here than Aaron Judge. There it is. Look, he's all right underneath his name 1-0, which means over the course of a year he wouldn't make any errors. He has the best range and he makes no zeros. All right. So of those guys, Rizzo, Torres, Kiner Falefa, Donaldson, Hicks, Cabrera, and Judge. They have another rating for running speed. So if your guy's on first base and a guy gets a single and you're going to take the extra base, it goes down to how fast you are. So a guy like Jose Trevino's running speed is 1 to 9. It's figured out with a 20-sided dice. So he would have a less than 50-50 chance of making it, 1 to 9. Of these guys, who do you think is the fastest according to the game? Rizzo, Torres.
What are the names again?
Yeah, it's basically the starters. Everybody in Harrison Bader. So we got Rizzo, Torres, Kiner Falefa, Donaldson, Hicks, Cabrera, or Judge. Which guy?
Judge.
Judge is a 1 to 14. There is
Kiner Falefa is number 2.
Yeah, Kiner Falefa is a 1 to 15. So on a 1 to 15 on a 20-sided die, he would be safe. Now it's interesting. They also, let me show you Judge's card again. They do like this thing called, you see where it says center field 3 -4. You see that? So that means Judge is such a good arm that you would -4 from the running. So Kiner Falefa, who's a runner 1 to 15, if he was trying to run on Aaron Judge, he becomes a 1 to 11. He almost becomes a 50-50 guy instead of a 75% guy or whatever. So you did very well with that quiz. That was amazing.
There you
go. You are smart. Amazing. So you pretty much agree with Stratomatic as far as the ratings go. The other stuff,
looking at the same data, but yeah.
What's that?
I think we're looking at the same data. I think Stratomatic is pulling up StatCast.
Well, they're doing something, and the way the game plays, it sort of works out that these guys perform as pretty much they should when you look at them from comparing them to the other teams. I'm disappointed in Harrison Bader because I would assume he'd be a 1 in center field. If not, he'd definitely be a 2.
Yeah. Harrison Bader is one of the fastest players in the game, one of the best center fielders in the game.
So I don't know. I think I might have to go out and buy the St. Louis Cardinals team just so I could get Harrison card. Maybe I'll do that in a week or two when it arrives. But you were right about Giancarlo Stanton having a good arm still, because if he was playing the field, he would be not Judge. He's not a -4, but he's a -1. So he would take 1 point away from anybody's running speed. So you'd have to a little bit running on Giancarlo Stanton. So kind of fun. Oswaldo Cabrera's arm, -1. He's got a pretty good arm too. I was going to say it might be a plus because he's never.
Yeah, he had a pretty strong arm out. He just has no range. He's slow.
And yeah, right. And it was learning a new position. So the other thing that I found interesting, I don't know if it was card in front of me, was I have the Marwin Gonzalez card, and in every single position, he's a 4.
So, that's right. Pretty accurate.
And he hit 185 last year. He had 184 at bats. I'm saying, what were the Yankees thinking? They had like,
I think one of the big advantages this year is the Yankees aren't going to have a Marwin on the roster, right? I think they're going to have a lot of players share playing time at positions, but none of them will be someone who's just, unless people get injured, someone who's just there to soak up playing time. And they have guys like Wilmer Defoe who are going to be at AAA. But again, I don't think unless something really goes wrong, you're going to see a lot of that, because they can take an injury or two in the infield and still have their full team. Plus, they have Anthony Volpe waiting around.
So let's just play this little game. When's Anthony Volpe arrive?
I don't know. I've been thinking about that. He's looked so good so far in the spring. So yesterday he started and led off. That's telling you something about how the Yankees think about him. He started at shortstop and led off. We have one game started by Peraza, one game by Volpe, and then now today was the second game for Kiner Falefa. So they're being very clear about that. But Kiner Falefa led off because there was no one else, no other major league players on the roster. And Peraza was, I think, in the middle of the lineup. Volpe got 2 hits. He stole 2 bases. Looked great. He had great jumps in his stolen bases. One thing that I think you'll see, and at least we're seeing so far in spring training, is that the minor league players that are fast and were in the minors last year with these rule changes, they are running. So today, Dominguez had a really nice stolen base. You got a really nice stolen base out. Tyler Hardman, who's not known for his speed. I forget. There's another stolen base that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but the Yankees young guys have experience with these new rules and they're testing them. And I think the major league players will kind of figure that out as well. But those guys have a head start, and Volpe just kind of looked pretty crafty out there on the base paths. I was pretty impressed. So when does he start? I don't think he breaks camp in spring training. There's just other guys ahead of him. I think you'd have to have Peraza and Kiner Falefa look bad, and so far they haven't looked bad. But I mean, Volpe could really force the issue. It'll be interesting. I think, though, that Volpe does not have any path right now to the majors, and something has to change for that to open up. Either a Donaldson or Torres or multiple of 2 of those guys have to really flame out. The shortstop experiments, Peraza, Kiner Falefa have to flame out. And then again, probably two things have to happen in order to clear a spot in the majors there. Injuries, whatever. Or he plays left field. And I really, look, I know that I'm the only person in the world saying this. I'm probably crazy, but it just makes sense that if Volpe can steal these bases and he can hit, and he's faster than most left fielders, and he's got a good enough arm, for a noodle arm position, and he's smart and has good baseball instincts, I don't see any reason why he can't play left field for half a season. We've talked about this on this show. There's a long history of Roy Whites of the world who moved from the infield to the outfield and stuck there. I don't know if Volpe would stick there. I think Volpe probably is more valuable as a third baseman or second baseman if Peraza is your shortstop. But I think that's his path to the majors. And in that case, you have to ask what has to go wrong. I think what has to go wrong is, for a month or two, Peraza and Cabrera have to not be very good. So I think I'm going to say June 1st. He goes down to AAA. He hits 350. He steals bases. The Yankees need a leadoff hitter, and they're just desperate to find a spot for him. And I wonder if Donaldson's hitting 180, if that forces the issue. If an injury to somebody forces an issue, I don't know what it will be, but I think by June 1st, I think Volpe's in the majors. He just looks so good. He also just feels like Jeter. God, I mean, if you look at his interviews, if you look at his instincts on the field, his profile, as an okay defensive shortstop with really good instincts and leadership qualities and all this, he just, and kid from New Jersey. I mean, he just feels like Derek Jeter in so many ways. I'm excited to watch him play. I hate that we have to wait. But also I don't really see how you get him on the roster right now.
What would you do if on June 1st, he's 349 and Brian Cashman, and the Yankees need him to come up, but Brian Cashman says, I was watching the Start Spreading the News podcast, and EJ Fagan, who I listened to, said he's hitting 350 in the minor league, so the Yankees call him up. He's really hitting 349, so we had to leave him down.
Yeah. I don't think hitting will be the problem, right? I think the problem will be defense and where do you play him? And I am a little bit surprised, honestly, that he hasn't taken some fly balls in left field yet. Cabrera, who's a better defensive infielder than Volpe, did it and switched pretty quickly, and he's slower than Volpe. I get that you don't want to, I don't think Judge is fragile. I think there's a greater probability that a prospect is fragile, though Volpe doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. So I get that you don't want to move him and that you want him to compete for shortstop. But I really think that if Hicks and Cabrera are hitting 180 at the end of April, that you're going to start to see Volpe play left field. It's first in the minors. You see how, ease him into it, see how he does, and then eventually for good.
Amazing stuff. EJ, what else do you have for us tonight? Any other great insights on the Yankees?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting things that we've seen here in spring training. One, Jason Dominguez, I mentioned, his home run in game 1 was 110 miles per hour, hardest hit ball so far in spring training for the Yankees. That is pretty good news. By the way, if you're interested, StatCast has all the exit velocity numbers. I'm waiting for sprint speed. I really want to see StatCast sprint speed on a couple of guys. I want to see it on Volpe. I've been looking at a lot of scouting reports of Volpe this offseason. We actually now have a lot more people ranking prospects than we ever had. So we have The Athletic, ESPN, Fangraphs, MLB.com, a few others that I'm not naming that I can't name off the top of my head, Baseball Prospectus. And there's a wide range on Volpe's speed. So Fangraphs gave him a 45, which is basically average speed, major league speed, roughly equivalent to what Oswaldo Cabrera has. I just don't believe that. I don't think you steal 50 bases in the minors with average speed, even with the new rules, even with some guile. And some other guys have had him at like 55, 60, which is like well above average speed, like center fielder type speed. So I don't know what the answer is. And I'd like to see StatCast give me an objective numbers. I really want to see sprint speed on Volpe and especially Dominguez, who I think we could see some very high sprint speed numbers on if we see it. Nestor Cortez, even though he's quote unquote injured, seems like he's fine. I wonder if there was just a little bit of a tweak and he decided not to go to the World Baseball Classic. World Baseball Classic starts next week. I'm kind of excited for that, but I think the Yankees are pretty healthy generally overall. They are not talking like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is their starting shortstop. I'm very curious to see what's going on there. That's kind of the first thing I look for in the lineup every game is who is the starting shortstop. They've also given Willie Calhoun some big spots. I think he was a starting player in game 1 and batting second, playing, I think, DH. Willie Calhoun's a guy who I have my eye on. I am also on the lookout, and I don't believe he has pitched yet, for DJ Snelton.
That's the guy who throws a million miles an hour, right?
The man of mystery has not shown up yet. However, he is in camp. He is very quiet on social media, so that's not very helpful. And I think it is. I think any day now we should see our first DJ Snelton appearance. We will see how hard he is throwing. He has videos of himself throwing 99. He is 6'6" and a lefty, and we'll see if he has any control. We know nothing about him other than he has spent most of the last 2 years, I think, working for a driveline baseball type coaching situation. That is what I'm looking for. What am I not looking for? I don't care if the Yankees win games. I don't really care how the starting pitchers do. The starting pitchers always kind of work on weird stuff. So like Severino got shelled today. I don't think that's going to tell us very much about what's going on in spring training. I think it's interesting when you hear that they're working on a pitch. So Severino working on a pitch, that's what I care about more than how do they look, how hard are they throwing. Those types of things I think are just fool's errands in spring training.
I agree.
I will note Judge has played center field already. So that's still a thing. You've also seen guys like Florial play center. And so there's a little bit going on there. I think it's interesting that Gleyber Torres is playing more than anybody else. So he was on that first road game, and veteran players, I think he counts as one now, don't like to take that road trip. He had a big home run, looked pretty good. I think he's had it batting like 800 so far. I mean, he's hitting pretty well. I think it is interesting that Gleyber Torres feels like he's fighting for a job, though I don't know if he is. And it'd be very interesting to see what happens if both Torres and LeMahieu are playing at the top of their games. I don't know where the playing time goes at that point. I don't think I've seen Josh Donaldson yet. I don't think he's played yet. If he has, he hasn't played much. Looks like he played today, I think. Or I don't know. But Donaldson is a player that I want to see if he looks healthy, if he looks fast. We haven't seen much of that yet. Trying to know what else. Willie Randolph was giving pointers to Anthony Volpe. I like that a lot. Aaron Judge had a really cool comment. He was asked why he isn't, if he would love to play in the World Baseball Classic and why he isn't. He said, look, I'd love to play in the World Baseball Classic, but I was just named captain. And, in this camp, we got a lot of young players. And I think it's my responsibility to be here with them, not off in some other camp playing in the World Baseball Classic. That is the best possible answer to that question. You could imagine him giving a very kind of milquetoast answer saying, I'm just kind of focused on getting ready for the season, or I really just want to focus on winning a championship. But no, he did the leader thing. And this is, the captain is a very symbolic move. There's been lots of leaders on the Yankees since Derek Jeter retired and was no longer the captain. But that's a captain move. And I love that. And I'm excited to watch the rest of Aaron Judge's career as the Yankee captain.
How many home runs is Aaron Judge hitting in 2023?
51.
Wow, I was going to say 5. Wow. 51 would be amazing.
Yeah,
EJ?
look, I think Aaron Judge, I think we got spoiled last year, but Aaron Judge is so good. And he said, what does he want to do this year? He wants to make more contact. That's a great sign. I think Aaron Judge with more contact is a very scary player. I mean, him with below average contact rates last year was the best player ever. So more contact, Aaron Judge. Let's just keep playing until we get the robo-umps. Robo-ump Aaron Judge is unstoppable. That's what I want.
What if, last question, what if the Yankees try Judge in left field? And, the whole thing is Stanton would do better if he plays in the field because he feels more. And he's out there for 15 games and his batting average as a left fielder is 137. But he plays a great defensive left field. And Giancarlo Stanton is actually doing pretty good in right field. But
I don't think
the
the two things are related. I think
it gets in his head. I mean, that's happened. He just doesn't hit when he plays left field. Do you say, you know what? Guess he can do it, but let's put him back where he's.
I don't think that's a large enough sample to make that decision. I think the Yankees. I think if Aaron Judge is obviously frustrated on defense, that's a good reason not to play him in left field. But if he is hitting well, if he's fielding well, I don't see any reason why those two things should be related.
They probably are. And I just like asking silly questions sometimes. Jay, we did it. There's another hour in the book. Hey, by the way, thanks for covering with Andy Singer with me for me last week. We'll get that up on Start Spreading the News. I have lots of things to catch up with. We have a Bronx Beat podcast from last week to put up there. So we're going to have a lot of these podcasts as featured articles coming up over the next couple of days. EJ, thank you so much. This has been the Start Spreading the News show, the best show. Well, along with the Bronx Beat podcast and the Dr. Sem Yankee show, but one of the best Yankee shows out there. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you right back here next Monday night at 9 p.m.